can you describe the transition you've made between Insurgentes and Henke No Race? I mean, like musically and professionally. Is something about some record that you really want to change right now?
It's not really a question of transition. It's more a question of not wanting to repeat myself. Mm-hmm. I love Insurgentes. It's probably still my favourite of my 4 solo records. But once I'd done it, I didn't want to do it again. Uh-huh. So, and I feel that way with all the records I make. So, Insurgentes is different to Grace for Drowning. It's different from Raven. It's different from Henke No Race. They're all distinctly different from each other. That's more of a personal quest I have to always feel like I have a challenge to do something different with every record, to feel like there's a sense of evolution from record to record to record. Uh-huh. So it's not a conscious thing, it's just instinctively I have no interest in doing the same thing I did last time.
Repeat yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we know that you've created a story for Henke No Race based on a real story that happened in London, actually. You've created a character choosing an actress, and you've made something very interesting, that is the participation of a female singer, Ninette. Mm-hmm. How is working with them, and how was directing them to be the essence of this lonely girl?
Yeah, I mean, not only Ninette, I had a female actress read the story on no, Carrie is the model. I meant the female actress that reads the story on Perfect Life. Mm-hmm. So I hired a female actress to read that story, and it was important to me to have a female presence on the record because it's a female perspective. The only thing I can say is when I showed the text to these ladies, if they felt anything wasn't believable, if they felt anything wasn't credible, or they felt uncomfortable about anything, I said to them, please tell me, if you don't feel any of this feels real. And they both said, no, it seems very believable. They were happy they felt comfortable. Yeah. They felt it was real, they felt it was believable. So that was really my only criteria. I mean, I wasn't sure how much the women fans would accept it. Yeah. But actually I have more women fans now than any time before in my career. So I think that it must have been quite successful. In a sense, we all have a shared experience, human experience, men and women have the same, loss, regrets, loneliness, anger, confusion, that feeling of isolation. We all know what those things are like. So even when you're writing from a female perspective, there's a lot that I share as a man that a woman would also feel. So I think that in a sense wasn't as relevant, it wasn't as much of a challenge as it might have been, because I think a lot of things are universal to human beings anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next question is about, we are filmmakers, and on tour you are like a film director, like a movie director.
Right.
You have the control of almost everything. And I really want to know how you design your live consoles, including the audiovisual stuff, almost about the lights, the sounds and everything. But you have worked with Lassie Hall, which is one of my favorite photographers ever. And how do you get involved with all these artists and cinema and put it on your record?
Well, for me, it's all about storytelling. Yes. Now, if you start off from the point of view that you're writing, now I don't write 3-minute pop songs.
No.
I write albums.
Yes.
And for me, the album, the 60 minutes or so on a compact disc, or the 2 sides of a vinyl record, however you look at it, there is something that is analogous to a feature film or a full-length novel. If you're a writer, a novel, if you're a filmmaker, a director, you have 90 minutes, 2 hours to tell a story. It's the same with music. You have a certain amount of time to tell a story. You're looking to create a narrative, a musical journey, a journey through the lyrics, through the story. And for me, when I'm writing the music, I can't divorce myself from having a kind of visual version of it running in my head. And that's partly because I grew up loving cinema as literature as much as I love movies. So for me, it's like, okay, it's music, but it's also a book.
Yes, of course.
It's also a film. Yes. Now, whether those things literally exist or not is kind of not relevant because I'm still seeing it as a movie in my head. Yes. Now, on this occasion, I worked with 3 filmmakers, Lasse, Youssef Nasir, amazing, and Jess Cope, and the animator. I worked with all 3 of them, and I kind of figured out in my mind which song I thought would be most suited to which filmmaker. And yes, I sit down with them and I discuss the lyrics. Yes. And I try to give them an idea of these things I see in my head. Okay. And also we talk about common reference points that we have. So with Lasse, I can talk about movies we've seen that we both love. You know, whether we talked a lot about movies like Under the Skin and Lynch films and Jodorowsky films and all of these reference points which I know we share. So I can say to Lasse, hey, you remember that scene in Under the Skin where Scarlett Johansson, and he's yeah, that's great. So he goes away with this idea in his head. Now of course when the film is made it looks nothing like that. It has a unique Lasse Hoyle look to it. But it's important also, I think, to have common references. With Youssef, with Perfect Life, I said to him, there was a movie he'd never seen. I said, go and watch Picnic at Hanging Rock. Do you know that movie? Yes. I said, go and watch Picnic at Hanging Rock, the first Peter Weir film, or the first big mainstream success piece. That's the kind of feeling I want. And he went away and he watched it, and I think when you see Perfect Life, you can see it has got that quality. Yeah,
it's amazing. Okay, so you've made a cover version album, including some of my personal opinion, the best song ever made by artists like ABBA and Alanis Morissette.
All right, thank you. We agree on that then, good.
Yes. Yeah. What can you tell about the way you recreate these songs? For example, The Day Before You Came, that is absolutely beautiful and it's my favorite. And how do you recreate her being the original one?
Well, I think the answer to your question is I don't try and recreate because I don't want to just do a version that's similar to the original version. For me, when you do a cover version, it should be about reinterpreting it, not recreating it, but finding a way to give it a different context, different feeling. Now, the ABBA thing, one of the reasons I wanted to do the ABBA song is because it's such a great song, and it's a song about loss, and it's a song about loneliness and regret, and it has that kind of quality. She's talking about somebody coming back that she hasn't seen for a long time, but you're not quite sure whether this person is really coming back at all. It has that slight ambiguity. It's a song about loneliness and isolation, but the original version was done in this kind of 80s synth pop style, and I think a lot of people actually dismissed the song. They didn't think it was an important song because they didn't really look beyond this kind of 80s pop sound. Yes. And when you look beyond that and you look at the lyrics and you look at the sentiment and you listen to the chords and it's one of the most devastatingly beautiful, melancholic, lonely songs about loneliness ever written. And I thought, okay, wouldn't it be great if you could take a song like that and make people actually listen to it in a different way by just stripping away everything, just the chords and the singing. Now, Agnieszka sings it beautifully on the original. I'm not going to match Agnieszka, so I make it sound like my song. So that's the answer to the question or not. It's not about recreating for me, it's about reinterpreting. And I deliberately pick songs that I think my fans would not expect me to do. There's no point in me covering a Pink Floyd song.
No, I know.
I mean, my sound already is much closer to that anyway. So I pick songs by ABBA, by Prince, by Alanis Morissette, as you say, by Momus, by The Cure, songs that actually are, in some respects, quite removed from my musical, area, but actually, in terms of sentiment and feeling, are very close. They're all songs really about loneliness, melancholia. The Alanis song, the ABBA song, the Cure song. They're all pretty much about, things that I write about all the time.
Of course. The next one is Graceful Drawing has very emotional songs, but you were talking about melancholia and stuff in the day before you came, but actually Postcard, it is pretty close about melancholia and sadness and loneliness, and can we say it is one of the most emotional songs you have ever written, with a soft piano and a painful lyric?
Yeah, I mean it's got that kind of contradiction between the beauty of the melody and the simplicity of the song, and the subject matter in fact being incredibly well, it's actually tragic. I mean, it's effectively a suicide kind of song.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's that kind of dramatic pull between the beauty of the song and the tragedy of the lyric. I've always loved that. You hear that a lot in my music.
Yes.
It's deceptive, because I think you can relate to, on one level, this very kind of pretty song, but then the more you kind of read the lyrics, you understand that something very, very devastatingly sad is going on. Which brings us back in a way to the things like the ABBA song, The Day Before You Came, which again seems on the surface to be very pretty, melodic song. You realise it's about isolation and loneliness and heartbreak. I love those. I've always loved those kind of. Since I was a kid, I've loved that kind of contradiction.
That's why you say happy music makes me feel miserable.
Yeah.
And miserable music makes me feel happy.
And I'm not the only one. And
I'll agree.
I'm not the only one, and most of my audience would probably agree with that. Otherwise, they wouldn't be my fans. You know.
Of course.
There's something about that.
Yeah. Okay. So after listening to your whole career, I got a feeling that you did almost everything.
I hope not.
So, what is the next step for Steven Wilson, like professionally and personally? Do you think that there's something that you're missing already?
Well, you know, I've always surprised myself. Every step of the way, I've thought I've made my last record.
The last is always better.
The last is always the best, and I always feel like there's nothing I can follow this with. You know, I always feel that. Yeah. I felt like that pretty much for at least the last 10 years of my career, maybe even longer, where I make a record, I'm really happy with it, and I think, there's nothing left I can do now. And thankfully, every time I prove myself wrong, and I hope that continues, but I have no way of knowing. All I'll say right now is I have ideas for the next record. I've actually written already some songs for the next record, and there are things, this goes back to your very first question, there are things I can do that will make it different to anything I've done before. There are parameters I can set myself that will make it different to anything I've done before, and as long as I can do that, I think there is a reason to still make music. For example, I want Ninette much more involved in the next record. She's amazing, yeah.
Yes.
I think maybe the next record could be a bit more electronic, you know, more use of electronic sound, because the last couple of records have been more classic rock sound. Hank and Race Perfect Life and those begin to be more electronic. So as soon as I can say things like that to myself, okay, the next record I want to do more of this, a little bit more of that, maybe less of that, then I know that there's a way forward to do something a bit more, something different, you know. So I'm already confident there will be at least one more record, you know.
Yes.
But honestly, I don't know the answer to your question, and I never know the answer to that question myself, and that's scary, but also it's a challenge. And you know, writing music for me is really hard. I know people think it's easy because I'm very prolific, but it's really hard. And the reason I write a lot is because I work very hard. It's really hard, and it doesn't get easier. It gets harder because there's more things that you've done already that you don't want to do again. So I keep pushing myself. There'll be something.
Sure it will. So why the name 4.5 for your last record? It is related to Hank and Race?
Yes. Okay. There's two reasons. There's a famous Fellini film called 8.5. Do you know Fellini?
Yes.
So famous movie called 8½, which he considered to be something, a kind of project between his 8th and 9th movie, and he called it 8½, and ironically it became his most famous movie. And so it's a little reference to Fellini, pretentious reference to Fellini, but the main reason is the same thing. It's not a follow-up to Han Can I Raise, which was my 4th record. Mm-hmm. It's not the 5th record. It's music that I had left over from Han Can I Raise, also something from The Raven, also a couple of pieces I'd written for soundtracks that never got used. But I was very proud of these pieces, and I wanted them to be made available, but I felt like at the same time I feel like I've already moved on creatively from when I wrote those songs. Yes, so people say to me, why don't you just save them for your next record? Because I want to do something new, I want to do something different with it. These feel like they belong to Han Can I Raise. So yes, it's like, for me, it's a companion piece to Han Can I Raise.
You have Don't Hate Me with Ned.
And that's a much older song again.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
She does a lovely job.
Yeah. So we know that your solo project is your priority now, but you have recorded a Blackfield album recently. How do you do all of your projects at the same time? Do you ever get time for relaxing yourself, or you're just feeling you have to work all the time?
Okay, it's not entirely true. I don't have any other. I only have my solo project now. Blackfield is Aviv's project now. I play guitar on it for him. I'm not writing anything. I'm not producing it. He's got Alan Parsons now producing the record with him. So they're making the record. But I still go along because I love Aviv like a brother, you know, and I still want to help him out. And I have a historical investment in Blackfield. So, I mean, emotional investment, not financial investment. But I go along and I play guitar, and it's like a couple of afternoons, you know, here and there. And I enjoy it because I'm just like a session guy, you know, on that record. I'm more than that. It's more complicated now, obviously. But honestly, when it comes to something I put really all my heart and soul into, I stopped about 5 years ago. I stopped all this stuff with 6, 7 projects. I haven't made a No Man record for long. I haven't made a Porcupine Tree record for 6 years now. I've stopped all these kind of bands and projects, and I said to myself, okay, I just want to focus on my solo, the work under my own name.
Which is amazing.
Thank you. The work under my own name, and it does take most of my time, you know, because the touring gets longer and longer. As the interest goes up, the touring's got more and more intense. And of course, being a solo project, I have to be involved in every single aspect, like what you mentioned before about being the director. I have to be involved in everything, not just the things you see, the show, but things like being responsible for the t-shirt design, the website, you know, all of those things. Suddenly, you know, I mean, we used to share, I mean, to be fair, I used to do most of that with Porcupine Tree too, but there were certain things that would be shared out to the other members of the band. So now everything goes through me, and I'm a control freak, so that's the way I want it. But it does take a lot of time. I still do remixing. I mix albums for other bands, whether it's new bands or old bands, and I like doing that. And I'll probably do another record with Mikhail from Opeth at some point. Mm-hmm. And I'm not ruling out doing another record with No Man, another record Porcupine Tree one day. But they have to be things that would fit around this is my priority, and it probably will be until the day I drop dead. Now, so why would I go back? You know, this is me. I put my name to this, so this obviously is the thing. So why would I go back? So the answer to your question is I don't really have a lot of projects these days. 5, 6 years ago, you could have asked me that question, and it would have been the case. Yeah. And also the thing to say is that now I have such a long career behind me, 20, 25 years, that there's a lot of music that constantly needs to be reissued, remastered, repackaged. Sometimes just looking after the back catalogue, it's a big job. It's a big job, you know, this year alone, probably 3 or 4 albums will be reissued, remastered, sleeve notes, new artwork, da-di-da-di-da. There's always a need to That takes a lot of time too. Yes. If I wanted to, I could probably never make any new music ever again, and I could still just you just concentrate on curating all of the stuff I've already done. There are hundreds of Porcupine Tree live recordings. There are hundreds of solo, it's all this stuff. And one day I'll sit down and go through them all, but that's like a full-time job in itself.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So there's enough for me to do. Yeah.
Okay, so for finishing, my last question is, what about Latin America? Chile, Brazil, Argentina? How was fun? Everything was okay? You had a flu in North America?
North America, but not since we got to Latin America. Amazing. I mean, I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard it. The Latin American fans are on a completely whole different level in terms of passion, enthusiasm, and it's such a joy to play, And my audience is much younger as well, in places like America and in UK and Germany, my audience is an older, more kind of perhaps male-dominated audience. Not completely, actually these days it's a lot more women even there, but still. And then suddenly I come down to Mexico, Chile, Brazil, Argentina, and it's, I would say, 50-50 women and men, and it's a lot of young people, and that's a great sign.
Yes.
Because that means that, that this music is translating to the next generation. And they're not just all listening to, to mainstream pop, which to me is dreadful. Dreadful. Mainstream pop music these days is terrible. It seems to me, and so it's great to see that young people are a lot of young people are kind of feeling that way too, and they're looking for alternatives. I'll tell you something. I think the kind of music I play or Opeth plays, this is the alternative music of now. Mm-hmm. Like there used to be a time when alternative music was Nirvana and the Pixies and those kind of bands. That music is not alternative anymore. That's mainstream music. Yes. Foo Fighters is mainstream, and yet people still call them indie and alternative. Yeah. That's not alternative. The alternative music is this kind of music, because it's not in the mainstream. You have to discover it, whether it's through word of mouth or friend recommending you or whatever. Yeah. But once you discover it, you realise it's the alternative to all this crass, commercial, manufactured modern pop. And it's great for me to come down here and realise that so many young people have discovered it. Not a massive audience, yet, but it's growing all the time. We play to 4,000 people in Chile, which is amazing. And I think it's going to continue. Hopefully, it's going to continue to grow over the next 5 years or so. I always look forward to coming here.
Okay. So your show today will be just like Chile and Brazil. You decide the songs after the sound check?
No, I've already decided.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Steven.
My pleasure.
You helped me a lot.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Very good.